Yay, so welcome everyone to the Triangle Center for Spiritual Living. Welcome to those of you that are in the room. Welcome to those of you that have invited us into your homes through the power of streaming. So very grateful that you've included us in your morning. I know, because I've been introduced to them, that there are a few first-time visitors here this morning. Let's welcome them. And so for those of you that may not have met me, my name is Reverend Dusty Ripplemeyer. I have the pleasure and the privilege of being the senior minister of this amazing community. We are a part of a larger organization called Centers for Spiritual Living. There are about 750 Centers for Spiritual Living across the world. We gather together on Sundays and on Wednesdays for services, and then many other days for all different kinds of things, from classes to workshops to game nights to movie nights. And we just celebrate God, and we celebrate life. We celebrate our connection to life itself and to each other. We recognize that there is one God, and that God is not some external God off in a cloud doling out rewards and punishments, but a God that is within us and surrounding us, a God that is benevolent, that is everywhere at all times, and that we are connected to in ways that can never be broken. And so I'm grateful for everyone being here, for all of the new visitors, for just joining us, adding your voice, adding your consciousness, adding your love to the room. We appreciate it.
The reading for today is from Charles Fillmore. He writes, "The spiritual substance from which comes all visible wealth is never depleted. It is right within you all the time and responds to your faith in it and your demands on it. It is not affected by our ignorant talk of hard times, though we are affected because our thoughts and words govern our demonstration. The unfailing resource is always ready to give. It has no choice in the matter. It must give, for that is its nature. Pour your living words of faith into the omnipresent substance, and you will be prospered though all the banks in the world close their doors. Turn the greatest energy of your thinking toward plenty ideas, and you will have plenty, regardless of what men are saying or doing." So it is.
So good morning, and welcome to those of you who may have just arrived in the sanctuary. The theme for the month of November is financial health and prosperity, and I thought I'd make it really easy for you today by just calling my talk Financial Health and Prosperity. It's good, yes? So let's begin with the words in the title themselves. What do they mean? Financial is pertaining to or relating to money matters, while health is the general condition of our body and our minds. Good health is a state of vigor or vitality or wholeness. So in this case, financial health is a state of vitality of our thoughts about money, or the body of our affairs around money. Prosperity describes a successful, flourishing, or thriving condition, and is typically described or defined differently by different people. It means something different to everyone. It can often relate to money, but in my mind, I believe that it really encompasses all of life. It's about way more than just money. Reverend Ken Gordon, who is the spiritual leader of the Centers for Spiritual Living, the mothership that we call it, he talked about prosperity, and he defines it as the ability to do what we want to do it, when we want to do it, and with whom we want to do it with. I like that. Now, the underlying tagline for my talk this morning is that our fortune begins in consciousness. Let me repeat that. Our fortune begins in consciousness. Ernest Holmes says, since all is mind, and the only activity of mind is thought, and the only thing you get out of mind is what you first think into it, then all manifestation is backed up by a definite idea. Every idea is a thought in your mind, and everything that happens to us is backed up by some mental attitude. So today, I really would like each of us to consider that the experience of having prosperity is not about our outer circumstances. It's not about what we have or do not have. It's not about the money that we do or do not have in our banking accounts. The fundamental truth is that our experience of prosperity is determined by our inner state. We embody prosperity when our inner state matches ease and flow. When our inner state does not match ease and flow, it is really almost impossible for us to experience prosperity in our lives. We create our outer lives, the world of form, from our inner state. Now, this is the truth, not just some of the time, but it is actually the truth all of the time. We create the experiences of our lives from our inner state, as within, so without. The natural state of prosperity is an endless interconnected flow. And when we realize that we are the architects of our lives, and that everything comes to us through consciousness, then we will be able to transform our experiences. When we understand this, when we live our lives from this understanding, we will be able to transform our experiences. When it comes to the experience of money itself, it is the same law and the same principle that is in action. The natural state of prosperity is an endless, interconnected flow. In her book, The Trance of Scarcity, Victoria Castle says, we do not have to supervise it, control it, entice it. Our role is to simply let it flow. Let the flow do what it naturally does, move in freedom. We allow flow its freedom of movement by removing whatever artificial barriers that we have in place. So these barriers, these artificial barriers, can be our thoughts about ourselves. These barriers can be our belief about prosperity. It can be our belief in separation. It could be our belief in lack and limitation, or it could be the constricted stories that we tell ourselves and about our lives. These barriers create life experiences that are less than prosperous. When we find ourselves blocking or resenting or pushing away anything from our lives, then what happens is that this blocking energy, this resenting energy, this pushing away energy actually pushes away prosperity out of our experience. It just pushes it away. We truly live our lives from the inside out. Nothing happens except what happens through consciousness. The good news is, however, that we have dominion over our thoughts. We can step into a new belief. We can always make up a new story. The invitation is to take a good look at our thoughts or our beliefs or our stories that we tell ourselves. When we become more aware of them, when we become more aware of our thoughts and beliefs and stories, then we become equipped to create a new reality, a new experience of life that is filled with ease and overflowing with good. The invitation is to also learn to recognize when we are doing something physically that also actually resists that flow. It could look like tensing up. It could look like clenching. It could look like slumping over, or any other way that we physically resist the flow of life through us, and to allow ourselves to just relax, to allow ourselves to open up and to breathe deeper. The invitation is to interrupt an old pattern and to replace it with a new one that better serves the life that we really wish to experience, the prosperity that we wish to have in our lives. When we are able to let loose those artificial barriers, then we become open to the flow of life. We become open to the prosperity that is all around us. The law of life is prosperity. God is an infinite, inexhaustible, endless source of supply. And since God's resources are infinite, then our resources are infinite. In order to experience this kind of prosperity in our lives, the invitation is to begin today to acquire a prosperity consciousness. The fundamental underlying truth is that consciousness is cause. It's cause in our lives. And people that have a prosperity consciousness also have an outward expression of it. This is just the way that it works. Now, this fundamental truth is that if we can conceive of an inexhaustible supply in our consciousness, then there is a way that we can make that supply manifest in our life, that we can make manifest that supply in our form. If we can imagine it, if we can hold it in our consciousness as the truth, then we can make that happen. We demonstrate prosperity by understanding this truth, by understanding the way that it works, and living our lives from a context of abundance, from a consciousness of prosperity. Supply may seem, when we look out into the world or look out into our lives, supply might seem in the world of form to come from outer channels, to come from things outside of us, from our jobs or winning the lottery or something like that, that it comes from outer things that are outside of us. But the truth is that our ability to experience prosperity in our lives depends on our ability to powerfully stand in a prosperity consciousness. So, how do we do this? How can we create a consciousness of prosperity? How can we allow ourselves to open to the prosperity that is all around us? Victoria Castle, in this book, The Trance of Scarcity, she talks about 6 different things. And those 6 things are aligning, attracting, gratitude, generosity, receiving, and giving. And she says that these 6 things are the way to tap into the flow. So in aligning, we give up trying to force life to turn out in any particular way. And we open ourselves up to inspiration. When we are aligned, we recognize that we are one with God, the creative force back of everything that there is, seen and unseen. We recognize that we are one with the intelligence of the universe, a universe that is always for us and never against us, a universe that is always working on our behalf to bring about the opportunities and the resources that we need in our lives. Opportunities and resources that are sometimes beyond our wildest imagination. Our job is not to try to figure everything out. Our job is to remember who we are, a spiritual being having a human incarnation. The invitation is to stay in conscious alignment with God, to give up all sense of separation, and to choose a sense of belonging. The invitation is to merge with that which is greater than ourselves and trust that it is operating on our behalf in limitless and really amazing ways. I hear stories all of the time about how things unfold. We belong within that flow of life. It is our birthright. We arrived on the planet smack dab in the middle of that flow. Charles Fillmore says in his book Prosperity, claim your entitlement. I am a child of the universe, richly endowed with the fullness of all good. A child of the universe. Can you get that into your consciousness? Not just the offspring of your parents or a product of the times, but a child of the universe. You are an expression of the infinite creative flow, entitled to as constant support as the lilies of the field. God is a mighty stream of substance, and we are a tributary of that stream. The invitation is to stand firmly aligned with it, to get in that flow and stay in that flow. In attracting, we show up for life with an irresistible confidence. In attracting, we give up grasping and straining from a place of doubt and instead focus on confident expectation. I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt. Confident expectation. The truth is that you don't attract what you want, and you don't even really attract what you think you deserve. You attract what you expect. You attract what you expect. And when you focus on what is missing in your life, then you are attracting from a consciousness of lack and limitation. And what shows up from that space is much different than what will show up when you are attracting from a consciousness of wholeness. Victoria Castle says, knowing your wholeness is always intact, no matter your circumstances, and is never at risk, is attractive. Confidently expect. Your assurance makes you irresistible to life, to the universe, to God. Our assuredness, our faith, our expectation of good allows prosperity to flow to and through our lives every time. In gratitude, we are deepening our connection to and our appreciation of and pleasure with life itself. Gratitude focuses our attention. It affects how we see and how we move. Gratitude is generative. It alters our set point for what is normal. It alters our set point for what we expect. It alters our set point for what we are open to receive. Gratitude deepens the pleasure of receiving, expands our capacity for aliveness, deepens our appreciation for everything, and makes us eager to accept more and more and more good. We don't have to wait for our lives to get better to feel grateful. We don't have to wait. Living in gratitude right now sweetens the life that we are living just as it is. Albert Einstein says there are two ways to live life. One as if nothing is a miracle, the other as if everything is a miracle. In receiving, we are available, accessible, alert, awake, and prepared. We allow life to touch us deeply. Receiving means that we're consenting to be a conduit for the flow of life to move through us. Now, if we don't believe that we can live a prosperous life, then we unconsciously create the conditions and the circumstances that assure that our lives will not be prosperous. Think about receiving like the inhalation of a breath. It's saying yes to life. The chest, think about it, when you take a good deep breath in, the chest and heart open up to allow an ever-increasing capacity for aliveness to flow in. The same is true in receiving. The invitation is to stop limiting the flow and to allow ourselves to be touched or expanded by joy. It is possible to deepen our capacity for aliveness. So if you're sitting right here right now thinking, I don't feel very alive, it's possible to expand your capacity to feel alive, to feel that aliveness. And it's really simple. All that you really need to do is to simply take the time to notice the little things that please you. And then to allow ourselves to feel and to appreciate those things. And to do that with conscious intention. Our degree of prosperity is not a matter of how much we have, but it's really a matter of how we are with what we have. Does that make sense? When we stand in alignment with God, we realize that we are actually a part of that stream. And when we really have a deepened awareness of being part of that stream, then we recognize that it's constantly moving through us. The wave, right? The wave is not separate from the ocean, but it's an integral part of it. And the same is true for us in this flow of life. Charles Fillmore says in his book, Prosperity, there is no scarcity of the air you breathe. There is plenty of air, all you will ever need. But if you close your lungs and refuse to breathe, you will not get it, and you may suffocate for lack of air. When you recognize the presence of abundance of air, and you open your lungs to breathe it deeply, you get a larger inspiration. This is exactly what you should do with your mind in regard to substance. So our attitudes, our mental concepts, our beliefs, and our outlooks are this interconnected link with God's rich substance and our access to it. The underlying truth is that God can only do for us what God can do through us. So the invitation is to be open and be willing to receive. Let go of any barriers that get in the way of your being able to receive all of the good that is around you. In generosity, we give up hoarding and this constant push that many of us seem to have to acquire more and more and more. It is about really joyfully stepping into an experience of fullness, to allow ourselves to recognize when enough is enough and to really experience being full. And then not only to be able to experience being full, but to be able to experience that spilling out of us like water in a bathtub. That spilling out that just, because we simply want everyone to have what we have. And so you want to share it. When we're full, sharing comes just naturally. We just want to do it. We're compelled to do it. We just can't hold it in. When we are aligned and residing in that flow, we recognize that we cannot be depleted. We cannot be diminished. And that the more that we are willing to share, the more that we actually receive. Think of generosity as the exhale, the out-breath. So openness is receiving, followed by a sense of fullness, and then followed by generosity and giving. The inhale and the exhale. It does not occur to generous people to dam up the flow. They are simply too busy enjoying being right smack in the middle of it. The invitation is to just try to hold your breath for a long time and to really recognize how uncomfortable it truly is. In giving, we give up that stagnation that occurs when we dam up the flow. In giving, we give up that stagnation that that happens when we become captive to what we have. We then send out and release, making room for more good, making room for whatever comes next. It is the exhalation that makes room for that. It is the giving that makes room for that. You can't have one without the other. Coming from an open and full heart, giving is pure pleasure. There is absolutely no sense of obligation around it. The truth is that giving never diminishes us. In giving, we are not giving away anything. We are giving way to God. We are giving way to life. We are giving way to the flow. We are powerfully stepping into the law of circulation, into the law of giving and receiving. So the invitation is to recognize that true giving is our consent to let that flow move through us. It is our consent. It is saying yes to life. There's an old saying that says, when things get tight, something's got to give. That something is each of us. When we hoard our time, our talent, or our treasure, we are saying no to the flow of life through us. When we give, we are saying yes. The most important thing about giving in general is, where are we giving from? Where are we giving from? Are we giving from a consciousness of lack and limitation, or are we giving from a consciousness that knows that the universe is abundant and that it is God's good pleasure to give us the kingdom of heaven on earth? Eric Butterworth, in his book, The Flow of Life, states, "We are forever in the presence of an infinite and eternal energy from which all things proceed. Thus, it is never for lack of life, substance, intelligence, or love that we experience difficulties, but because we are out of the flow of life." And one of the most effective ways of getting back into the flow is through giving. We may have been thinking lack, thinking get, or the need to get. Now we must think give. And to this mix, I add faith. In faith, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt who and whose we are. We have faith in the inner workings of our mind. We have faith in the law and the way that it works. We have faith in our own spiritual nature. We trust that the spiritual laws work the same way all of the time for everyone with no exception, and that we can use those laws. We have faith that we can use those laws. We know that we are more than our bodies, more than our circumstances, more than our bank accounts. We see beyond the world of form to the spiritual truth of who we are. Now, the key to having a prosperous life is to have a consciousness of love. Through that love, there is no end to God's givingness. No end. The invitation is to powerfully step into the activity of loving life, just loving life everywhere at all times. Because when we are able to do that, this in turn attracts to us the energy of prosperity. This energy is fulfilling and nurturing and provides for us everything that we need, everything that is necessary to experience prosperity in our lives. So we have choice in the matter. We can choose to create a consciousness of prosperity and to live our lives from it. We can choose to stand firmly grounded in our alignment with God. We can choose to attract prosperity from a context of confident expectation and with an openness to receive. We can choose to be grateful right now for all that we have. We can choose to generously spill over from fullness and to give, to make room for more good. We can choose to say yes to allowing prosperity to flow through our lives unimpeded. Please repeat after me. Today I choose to allow prosperity to flow through me. Today I choose to allow prosperity to flow through me. I choose to experience financial health and prosperity now. Choose to experience financial health and prosperity now, right now. And so it is. So I invite you to turn within. And as I do so, turning away from the world of form, turning away from all things that don't look like prosperity, and allow myself to turn my attention toward the inner side of life, toward that space and place that I call God, which is the very essence of prosperity, of wisdom, of creativity, of joy, and of unconditional love. And I know that I am one with it, that I could never be separated from it, that I am its ambassador on the planet, that right where I am, it is in its fullness, in its wholeness, like a hologram. All of it, right where I am. And I know that this can't be true just for me. I know that it is absolutely true for each and every person in this room, that each of us is a unique and divine expression of God. And it is from that place of wholeness that I speak these words about and for each of us today, truly knowing that we are spiritual beings having a human incarnation, that we arrived on the planet smack dab in the middle of the flow of life, that prosperity is who we are at our very core. And so knowing that, I claim for each of us that there is ease and grace around finding our way back to that stream, finding our way back to an alignment with the truth of who we are, finding our way back to our oneness, our wholeness. And to know that as we do so, we create a different experience for ourselves. That we create lives that are fulfilling, lives that are prosperous, lives that we love to live. I claim ease and grace around this alignment, around attracting, around generosity and gratitude, around opening ourselves up to receive all of the good that is just waiting for us. And I claim ease and grace around this idea of giving, knowing that it never depletes us, it never diminishes. In fact, it expands us. And I'm so grateful to know this truth and to speak these words. So grateful for the power of prayer, knowing that these words are loosed into a law that only ever says yes, that they are clothed in form even as they are spoken. And so I speak them, and with confident expectation await their manifestation, letting go and letting God be God. And I invite each of us to anchor this prayer for ourselves and for each other simply by saying, "And so it is. Amen." Amen.